Chapter 11. Unyielding Deities. Zhao gasped beside me. I glanced over to see he had moved his eye patch from his left eye to his right, but he had also removed the bandages over the eye he'd had surgery to save, and he was looking right at Towdy, the tree, and the scroll. The ground shook as the bright light coming from the tree started to overtake them all, its glow spreading until all four beings were glowing so brightly they were mere silhouettes in the light. But then those silhouettes melded together and shrunk, becoming a new being altogether. The ground was shaking so terrible that even Lin Yu and I were struggling to stay standing while everyone else was toppled by their shifting balance. Suddenly, it seemed even the cloudy darkness itself was being absorbed by this new being, being physically sucked into its growing mass. It pulsed disgustingly as its brightness shone so bright it rivaled the sun, making me need to shield my eyes. When the shaking light finally stopped and the light began to fade, I found myself standing with Lin Yu, our mouths agape at the glowing white body we still couldn't see through the light. When the glowing light surrounding the merger faded too, it revealed a being I'd never imagined underneath. She had eyes of pure black and white hair that hung down around her jaw and framed her face, and she wore a stone mask not too dissimilar to Towdy's, though with smaller horns. Her skin was dark red, and she had a single, fleshy, twisted horn coming from the right side of her forehead that pointed straight up. She only stood up to my waist and nor nothing at all, her human-like body left naked by the merging of disjointed beings. Her chest was flat like a young boy's, but she had wide, curved hips, and her hands and feet were hooves that angled outward and split apart into odd, finger-like appendages. "Finally, our plan worked, Lai," she said with an almost vicious undertone. "Mother?" Liu asked, fright and confusion in his eyes. The new being smiled at Liu and simply nodded. Lin Yu looked as though she hadn't recognized her mother as of yet, but this exchange seemed to make her reconsider as she looked back to her with surprise. Lai had been holding onto Lin Yu's shawl to keep from being blown away, but stepped up to speak with his late wife. "It's good to have you back, May," Lai offered. "Yes, and now that I've got a body that can avenge our daughter, Lin Yu, give me your light," May asked. Lin Yu was taken aback. "You want me to give you my shining resolve?" she asked, deeply upset. Her mother responded by merely holding out her hand. From her pocket, she pulled out a glowing golden orb that shined bright like the morning sun. "But I earned this, with my own strength. I followed our creed." "Lin Yu, with the orb you claimed from that dragon, I'll be able to draw out its full potential and use it to destroy your sister's killer," May explained. "But I can already defeat him," she declared in frustration. But instead of answering her daughter, May moved to snatch it. I was surprised when Lin Yu pulled it out of her diminutive mother's reach. Her father tugged on her sleeve and said, "Lin Yu, do not disobey your mother. We've been working to bring her back from the dead for ages. You will not stand in the way of our plan." "And how exactly did Towdy fit into your plan?" I asked. All eyes snapped to me. "A lucky bonus. And just who are you?" May asked in reply. "You don't need to know who I am. Do you have any idea how many people have died horrible deaths to make your plan come true?" I asked. "Death does not exist anymore, boy," Lai responded. "Well, not quite," May replied, taking everyone's attention. "What?" he replied with shock. "Through absorbing Yang Wen, I've gained his power and his place in the divine order." "What does that mean?" I asked, as most of the rest of us puzzled about it. I was surprised when Zhao spoke up beside me. "It means she's the new god of death." "That's right. Now, Lin Yu, hand over the light," May replied. "But Lin Yu hesitated, but Lai yanked on her sleeve and grabbed at the orb. She raised her arm back up to keep it out of her tiny parent's reach. "That's enough," Liu said as he walked over. Lin Yu looked relieved to see her brother coming and started saying "Thank you, Liu," but was very surprised when he grabbed her by the arm. He simply told her to hand it over, as he started pushing her arm lower so their parents could reach it. Lin Yu looked at me for only a moment, but then she yanked her arm from her brother and started stepping back from her family. May flexed a hand and claws of pure purple energy surrounded her fingers as she leaped up and slashed Lin Yu across the face. Moving fast, May snatched the ball of light from the ground and immediately stuffed it into her mouth. She retained her black eyes, but white irises arose from the emptiness as her entire body started to glow bright purple. The ground started to shake and a mighty wind blew out from May in all directions, shoving me back a couple meters as I grabbed onto Zhao to keep him from being blown away. The new goddess's light enveloped her as she started to grow, getting taller by the moment as the entire world trembled under her now unyielding might. I still couldn't sense Chi completely, but I could feel her energy radiating off of her like heat, an incredible and insurmountable dread burning across my skin like hurricane winds. As our mother continued to grow, Lin Yu got to her feet and moved like a flash as she snatched the keyring from her brother and surprised us all by tossing it to Ren. "You there, monkey girl! Free your father if you want to live through this," she said as Ren caught their keys by the ring. "Lin Yu, how dare you?" Liu asked. "It's all right, Liu. Your mother will finally avenge your older sister. Unlike you, Lin Yu, you're a failure and a disgrace to my family. How dare you betray us?" Lai spat at his youngest child. Lin Yu scowled at her father and flourished her blade. "You betrayed our entire country in the name of revenge, and now you've betrayed me by choosing to believe in her stolen power over the strength I struggled to earn. Don't you lecture me about betrayal," Lin Yu growled furiously. "So this is really what the truth meant," Liu said quietly to himself. "Tell me the truth already," I jumped in, but Lai pointed up to his son's face. "You will keep your mouth closed. There's a reason I had your lips sewn shut." "You did what?" Lin Yu asked of her father as Liu shrunk from them both. Mei was still growing and was now the size of a 2-story building, and Ren was desperately putting keys into locks to try and find the right combination of key and jar, but I was surprised when Zhao tugged on my sleeve. I lost track of the others arguing as he told me, "The truth is, loyalty is only as deep as authority in their family." I was a bit struck by what he said as I struggled to understand it. He gave me a moment, but after seeing that I was unclear, he added, "Their bond is only held together by fear and tradition. Truth is, deep down, they can't stand each other. I wonder what happened to make their family like that," he asked himself. "I think I have an idea, but I have just one more question. Do those eyes of yours tell you what their plan is?" I asked desperately. "Well, I kind of feel like it can't possibly be true, but now that you mention it, ever since that demon showed up, my eyes keep showing me visions of her eating the sun," Zhao said. I gulped so hard I nearly choked. "Okay, great. No clue what I'm gonna do about that. Things are looking dangerous here. You should make some distance and find cover," I advised. Zhao seemed surprised but nodded just the same. I found myself lucky the Ming Song family was still bickering amongst themselves, but I was starting to get worried about the incredible size of Mei Ming Song's still growing body. She was growing so large her head was pushing through the clouds, and she sprouted massive wings that were made entirely of burning black energy. The sky itself trembled as she hovered above the ground and drifted into the air. It seemed like everyone stopped as Ren said, "Aha!" and finally found a key that fit into a lock and turned it. She yanked the chain off the jar and opened it, and immediately the scroll flew from the jar before unfurling itself and releasing Horseface. He was a literal man with a horse face, not a horse head, only his face was like a horse's. He was wearing a brown loincloth and carrying a lance, but nothing else. He looked like he was about to address the Ming Song family, but Ren got his attention, managed to explain the situation in a sentence or two, and immediately got to work on setting free Oxhead and Sun. I had returned my attention to the Ming Songs as Lai cocked a crossbow bolt, and Liu started to push past Lin Yu in an attempt to stop them. I knew this was where I was needed and got between them, taking an aggressive stance. Liu reached into his pocket and pulled out his dark orb. I even entirely turned away, but it seemed just having its darkened light shine upon you was enough to activate its effect, pulling my senses away from me one after another like before. I couldn't see or hear, but my sense of smell drifted off and my fingertips only felt slightly numb. But standing there with my back to my enemy, trying to protect Ren and desperately hoping to come up with a plan, suddenly I could feel it. And when I say I could feel it, I mean in every way. It was like I could see and smell and taste and hear the flow of the universe. I could feel Liu walking up behind me with his massive glaive raised. I turned back just in time to block his blow with my sword. I couldn't hear or see his gasp of surprise, but I could feel the shift in his emotions, and more so when I uppercut him so hard in the jaw that he flew several meters into the air. I leaped after him and delivered a powerful kick that sent him barreling through the sky into the city. As I landed, it seemed as though he reached a distant limit for his item, and I was suddenly sent into a slight state of shock by all my senses immediately returning to me at once. I stayed focused, and without even opening my eyes, I deflected the bolt Lai fired at me. I could still feel it. The emotion, the flow, the presence and energy. The chi of the entire battlefield was clear as day to me, and it has been ever since. I opened my eyes just in time to see the light surrounding Mei's incredibly massive body burst away from her, and her glowing seemed to stop along with it. Her foot alone was the size of the plateau, or maybe the entire city of Ordos, but fighting someone that big seemed downright impossible. She started to laugh a wicked, vicious chuckle as she started turning toward the east. My eyes darted for the moon, and I shuddered as I noticed it was now only barely above the horizon. The sun would be rising soon, and May would be even closer to it. I heard the click of a key in a lock and a joyful whinny before I felt another jar open and scroll reveal itself, but this one was Oxhead. He looked quite a lot like Horseface, only he carried a pike and a shield. Wren and Horseface quickly enlisted Oxhead to help them in finding the last key as Lai pointed to us and shouted, "Stop them!" Lin Yu hesitated a moment as I flourished my blade and took up a defensive stance, but I was surprised when Liu actually dashed up from wherever I'd kicked him to. Right, I forgot how fast he was, I complained. Liu charged me and I blocked and engaged him, but now that I could feel the flow of his emotions and chi clearly, it was like playing cards with someone who was always showing you what they had. I found myself fighting him absent-mindedly as I listened to Lai and Lin Yu. "So, you really have chosen these interlopers over us? Your own flesh and blood?" Lai asked, pointing his crossbow to Lin Yu. "You've spilled more of our blood than they ever could," Lin Yu spat back. But I was surprised when Lai grabbed a whip from his belt and lashed it at his daughter, hitting her right in the mouth. Lin Yu didn't even react beyond scowling at her father. Her lip reddened slightly by the lashing leather. He reared back and lashed her again, but this time she snatched the whip in midair. "You disgust me, but you're still my father. I refuse to harm you. But I won't let you hurt me any more," Lin Yu asserted. Lai didn't seem to know what to say as he yanked on his whip, but after a moment or two Lin Yu released it, making him smack himself right in the face with it. Lai reared back and snapped it at her again, but Lin Yu slashed it in half with a disapproving stroke of her blade. Liu had been going at me strongly, but he was starting to run short of breath, so he flashed me with that item again. My senses left me again, but it was a useless endeavor. All I did about it was chuckle to myself. Liu roared as he charged me, but he was being so aggressive that his feet were exposed as he ran, and he fell for a simple trip. The bulky man flopped onto his chest and skidded through the dirt behind me. He pushed himself to his feet and seemed to think going for Ren and the others was a good idea, but he learned how bad an idea it was when I ran up and kneed him in the stomach before breaking his shoulder and pulling on it with my free hand, and slamming through his upper arm with my elbow. That left him pretty strongly stunned, so I walked up to his battered body, reached into his pocket, and pulled out that black orb before dropping it on the ground and crushing it with my foot. My senses returned to me again as I did so, but Liu grunted through the agony of his broken shoulder. "You bastard! How dare you break my family treasure? My father gave that to me!" But I just told him, "You'll get over it," and left him there as I started heading back toward Ren and the others. May was starting to drift east across the landscape, and Lin Yu was reluctantly turning toward us, so I got between her and them. But I was surprised that Liu was already getting up so quickly. Our prayers were answered when I heard the click of a key in a lock behind me. Ren threw off the chain and unleashed the scroll of the final pot, loosing her father onto the battlefield.